What we're gonna do right now is break it down for y'all. Y'all ready? Get ready. Here it comes. There's a place where we hang around the way where we keeps them up 24 a day. We got dogs that are stupid, a mouse are tough, and a super silly rabbit can't get enough. We got a cow who's a cloven. We got more tunes than my man Beethoven.
Don't close your eyes, cause you're in tune heavy.
Cartoon Network for me 24/7.
Don't close your eyes, cause you're in tune heavy.
Cartoon Network for me 24/7. That's the M to the A to the S to the K. That's top tune stars on night and day. You know we're rolling with the Stones and Scooby-Doo. We're down with Droopy and Daffy and Dexter too. You know we got behavior that's really unstable, running 24 hours, but only on cable.
Don't close your eyes, cause you're in tune heavy.
Cartoon Network for me 24/7.
Don't close your eyes, cause you're in tune heavy.
Cartoon Network for me 24/7.
Don't close your eyes, cause you're in tune heavy.
Cartoon Network for me 24/7.
Hey, howdy, hey, awesome people of the internet, Wolfman47 here, and welcome to the 700 subscriber special. Subscriber special, yes, made it to 700 subscribers, and today I thought to talk about Cartoon Network. Now, as we know, recently Cartoon Network has kind of sort of ended in some countries. Here in the UK it's still well and truly still going, but to most people it's kind of ended thanks to Warner Brothers just making some even more funny and odd decisions, which, while not as bad as the stuff that Disney have done, it's kind of still worrying. But anyway, so today I thought to celebrate Cartoon Network by talking about all the different shows, the history of the channel and all its different blocks, and just go from there. Now, to begin with, Cartoon Network, as you might have guessed, is a channel, or was a channel, that is dedicated to just showing people animated stuff and cartoons. I should point out that, as I have done before, that animation and cartoons are different. Animation has layers to it, cartoons don't, but they usually can be quite similar, and some people do think they are one and the same, but actually no, they're not. Usually it's best to just look up online as to what the internet considers to be a cartoon, what they consider to be animation. So originally Cartoon Network was its own program block on some channel, I don't forget the name, and then eventually it became its own 24-hour channel, broadcasting cartoons and animated stuff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it was like that for a very long time. It began with broadcasting the archives of various cartoons from different studios, specifically MGM and Warner Brothers, so things like Tom and Jerry, Looney Tunes, Merry Melodies, the Hanna-Barbera stuff, and all this other stuff which I'll go to in the rest of the video, because I'm going to be doing this in multiple parts. And then about 3 years after it initially started, so it initially started in 1995, it then started creating its own original programming through a thing called Cartoons, which was Cartoon Network letting the viewers decide what cartoons/animated stuff should be given its own series, so based on like pilot shorts, whatever. Obviously a lot of these shows didn't quite make it to a full series, but then other shows did, and those shows are the shows that people know and love. And over the course of the years, it's had spin-off channels and other program blocks. So you've got Boomerang, which shows off all the old cartoons and animated stuff. You've got Cartoon Network 2, or what was Cartoon Network 2, which is basically stuff that's been shown on the main Cartoon Network channel, but had a while later, I should say. Then there was one time where there was one called CNX, and then later on Toonami, which was a continuation of the programming block on Cartoon Network, the aim of which was to show different animated and action-orientated cartoons and animated shows, as well as anime and stuff tailored to teenagers and older audiences, young adults, whatever. And then we had Cartoonito, which is pretty much for little ones. And yeah, that's pretty much Cartoon Network in a nutshell. Well, the history of it anyway. They had lots of video games, which I'm not going to go into detail today because I've played a few and most of them are hit or miss. And it's had a very good run. I have fond memories of it growing up. I just remember all the times where they did competitions, different programming blocks, and just many different ways to sort of get viewers interested in watching what Cartoon Network had to offer. It was one of a few children sort of TV channels that were tailored to a young audience that I was able to access growing up. So alongside that, there was also CBBC, which is obviously part of the BBC, CITV, which is part of obviously ITV. This Disney one called, I think, Digits, but I could be wrong, which was associated with CITV, but is now non-existent and not many people are aware of it, but it was a mostly Disney one. Also Nickelodeon, which I don't need to go into detail, I've done a few videos on Nickelodeon already. And then also Fox Kids, which then became Jetix and then became part of Disney and yada yada yada, which mostly showed a lot of different cartoons that were otherwise not being acquired by other networks, I guess you could say. I don't know. I never really had access to the Disney Channel because of how expensive it was. So yeah, Disney Plus. So yeah, that's basically your introduction to Cartoon Network. So what I'm going to do in each part is I'm going to talk about each of the different animated shows and cartoons from a particular point. So the cartoons, the shows that Cartoon Network showed before the original shows started coming in, all of their acquired stuff, and it's going to be a mixed bag of things that I have seen on Cartoon Network here in the UK, and also ones that I've seen on the Cartoon Network that's in Australia, because I have seen the Australian one as well, and I have seen a little bit of the USA one too, but not too much of it. And I spent a lot of time on the Cartoon Network website, specifically the USA one, because for some reason I just felt, when I was growing up, I just felt that the USA version of different channels I get here just had more content to share, obviously with limitations because of localizations and so forth. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do on this video. Hopefully Clipchamp will be okay with me making a much longer video than usual, but we'll see. And yep, each part will be separated by sort of different clips and whatever from Cartoon Network itself. So hopefully you'll stick around to hear what I think of the different shows and so forth. And yeah, that'll be it. That's it for the introduction and the history of Cartoon Network. It is still technically part of Warner Brothers, but nowadays showing on different streaming services, but we still have it here in the UK, fully operational and so forth, but it might end eventually for all we know. So yeah, alright, see you in the next runs out, just wreck it and you insured the thing.
the dogs lay down on the floor. For the right price I can get everything. Slip into the car, go driving to the farthest star. I don't need to walk around in circles, walk up in circles, walk around in circles, walk around and up. Don't need to walk around in circles, walk around in circles, walk around in circles, walk around and don't need to walk around in circles, walk around in circles, walk around in circles, walk around and
Okay, so we're going to start with what is probably the best part to start with Cartoon Network, which is talk about the shows that started on Cartoon Network for its first few years until they got the original cartoons and so forth. And what I've decided for this one is I'm just going to specifically talk about the ones that were around before Cartoon Network was a thing, came on when Cartoon Network started to become a thing, and then I think most of these then went on to Boomerang, and then some of these did come on after the originals started coming in, but yeah, we're just going to talk about specifically all the stuff that came from the long, big archives from the various studios that Cartoon Network just happened to broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until Boomerang became a thing, and then they all got put onto that. So, starting off, we got Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies. So, these two I kind of consider should be combined together because it's basically an old Warner Brothers cartoon about a bunch of slapstick characters doing all sorts of weird and wacky things. I've done a video on Looney Tunes specifically before about how I feel they should really retire. And to be honest, I think they're still good as mascots for Warner Brothers. And the cartoons, even though a lot are dated and not really all that politically correct these days, or dare I say woke, they still hold up pretty well. And I'm kind of pleased that unlike Disney, Warner Brothers are not that keen to change these old cartoons because of the sort of out-of-date stereotypes and so forth that happens, because it'd just be disrespect to the memory of things. But yeah, Looney Tunes is still okay. People still like the old cartoons. Some people do still like the sort of compilation films that we got that contained all these short cartoons. Most people will definitely say that in terms of the live action and animation hybrids, they're hit or miss. Some prefer the old Roger Rabbit one, and then others prefer the new ones. But yeah, so it's got all these weird and wacky characters: Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Elmer Fudd, Porky Pig, Foghorn Leghorn, and the rest of them. Yeah, good stuff. Then from MGM, but then later on became part of Warner Brothers as well, is Tom and Jerry, which is pretty straightforward. It's a cat trying to catch a mouse and doing whatever he can to do that. And just like with Looney Tunes, it's another very old cartoon that's got some out-of-date stereotypes and all sorts of stuff, but still holds up well. And pretty much all these shows I'm going to talk about did have some kind of continuation later down the line, but not as good as the originals, but okay for what I was trying to do. Another massive archive that Cartoon Network acquired is the stuff from Hanna-Barbera, which, again, like Tom and Jerry, is part of Warner Brothers these days. And Hanna-Barbera is probably a name some of you might not be all that familiar with, but this is basically the company that were responsible for the likes of Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, Hong Kong Phooey, Top Cat, Yogi Bear, the sort of newer series Jellystone, I think it's called. I might be wrong about that. And loads of other classic shows that have since continued on later down the line, especially Scooby-Doo, which has had way too many films and way too many shows because it's just so damn popular. But the other shows have got some things as well. So yeah, Hanna-Barbera is kind of a mixed bag of different shows, but you kind of get this sort of same basic premise that it's trying to be a sort of slapstick, funny kind of show with the laughing track and everything. So yeah. A British show now, Danger Mouse. I don't really remember Danger Mouse all that well, I must admit. I know it's about a mouse and he's got a little sidekick and he's kind of like a superhero kind of character. But yeah, that's all I know about that. But I have seen some of Danger Mouse. Another show that's a classic, but I'm not that familiar with, other than it's got a character that's quite depressed all the time, is Droopy. I've seen some of his cartoons, but not many, so I'm not all that familiar with him as well, other than he's just a dreary sort of cartoon dog character. And then we got the Pink Panther, which is pretty much as you'd expect, is about a Pink Panther who gets up to all sorts of different things. I will say with the Pink Panther specifically, there was a point on Cartoon Network where they were doing this sort of little campaign to sort of make out that Fred Flintstone has apparently been kidnapped, and they were trying, and there was like this little contest of people trying to find him, and in the place of what was going to be the Flintstones on the Cartoon Network schedule, they decided to put in Pink Panther instead, making a big deal that, oh, because Fred Flintstone's not around, we're just going to put Pink Panther there instead. So yeah, it was quite a good campaign, I'm not going to lie. And then there's Popeye. Well, self-explanatory. You know what Popeye is if you've not known him already. He eats spinach. He gets muscular, and he beats up people to save his girl. Yeah, pretty simple. Rescue the damsel in distress kind of story. And it did have a film that Robin Williams starred in, I heard. I've not seen it, but yeah, I'm not sure if I'd enjoy that. I think it just works better as a cartoon, personally. Then there's one that I've only ever seen one episode of, and I actually heard about it through the animation and live action hybrid film of the same name, which is Rocky, Bullwinkle and Friends. So you got Amuse, you got Squirrel and all their friends who just get up to trouble and mischief. And yeah, I've only ever seen one episode. I don't really remember it that well, and likewise with the film, I've only seen it once. And I remember it a little bit well than the cartoon, but not that much. And honestly, out of the animation live action hybrids I've seen, it's not my favourite. So yeah, just for the main reason that I don't actually remember it that well. But a show that I do kind of remember, but kind of, again, not sure if I remember that much about it, is The Magic Roundabout. So not talking about the film that it's based on, no, I'm talking about the actual stop motion show, The Magic Roundabout, which I was shown when I was little, because I think my parents had a VHS of it, or my grandparents had a VHS of it, and we would watch it sometimes. And yeah, it's pretty much about a magic roundabout and the people that sort of want to, do stuff with it. And then I do remember seeing the feature film, but it just came and went, and I don't remember anything about it. So yeah, but something I do remember quite well, because I was quite a big fan of it until I decided actually I should really move on to other things, was Thomas the Tank Engine, or as it's known these days, Thomas and Friends. So this was one of the shows that Cartoon Network started broadcasting much later down the line during its CGI era on Cartoonito, and I actually do fondly remember the show quite well. The stop motion or kind of animated one specifically, because yeah, it definitely had a lot of dark moments. I just remember all the different times these anthropomorphic trains and vehicles just crashing and all that, and it's an okay show, not something I would want to watch all the time, and maybe one day I will buy them back on DVD or something, because I do quite enjoyed it, but I will admit it's not really something I should really be into that much. I've got sort of like a person in my life that is way more into it than I was, but I remember collecting all the trains, remember being a fan of being part of the Thomas the Tank Engine official club, because there was a club. Remember collecting all the magazines and all the free gifts that came with that, and also reading some of the books. Some of the books were a bit more terrifying than others. I fondly remember reading one that was a little bit like Jaws, where there was some kind of where the trains came to a beach, and the trains were facing a sort of natural disaster, and everyone was trying to get on the train, trying to escape, and yeah, that's that. And the last one I'm going to talk about for this part of the video is Thunderbirds. So Thunderbirds came onto Cartoon Network later on after a lot of the originals were made their debut, and I'll be honest, I do kind of understand where some people are coming from in that seeing puppets just move around doing and all that can be a little bit creepy and scary, but you know what, it's Thunderbirds, and you know, Thunderbirds will go, I get it, but you know, after seeing so many better things, it's, yeah, I don't really understand it. So that is the end of this part. So just to say that this part is just all about the cartoons that are now on Boomerang, but also cartoons that came onto Cartoon Network and then went on to Boomerang, and cartoons that started on Cartoon Network before they start doing originals. So the next part will be about the Cartoon Network originals, specifically the ones that started out on the Cartoons banner, which I will explain in the next part. So see you then.
The city of Townsville. But enough about that.
Would you like to play a game of hide and seek now? X-ray eyes, please promise not to bleed now. Well, first we count to 10, and then we'll have some fun now. Or will you fly away before we count to 1 now? The signal in the sky, oh, that's when you know that you have to fly, oh. The signal in the sky, oh, let's go. You know you got a lot to do. Let's go. And everything depends on you. Hey girls, come out and play now. What do you have to learn to save the day now? Well, can't you come over, watch a movie with your friends now? Or will you fly away before we see you? Signal in the sky, oh, that's when you know that you have to fly, oh. The signal in the sky, oh, let's go. You know you got a lot to do. Let's go. And everything depends on you. You know you got a lot to do. And everything depends on you. You know you got a lot to do.
Alright, the part that some of you, or most of you, have been waiting for, the cartoons. So, for those who don't know what cartoons is, it was a thing that Cartoon Network ran every so often, where they would have a bunch of different short films with each having the potential of being turned into its own series, and usually there'd be like 2, maybe 3 that would be shown, and people would get the chance to go on the website and vote, and ultimately whichever got the most votes would be turned into a full-length series, and some would still get a series later down the line, but not as a sort of priority. Now, some of these the shows I'm going to be talking about now are all shows that did get a full series. There were a few that didn't quite get a full series, and honestly, there's a lot of them that I don't really remember that well. But I do remember fondly going on to the Cartoon Network website, the US one I should say, just looking at the different ones, there. Of course, I couldn't vote because I'm not a US citizen. I'm a UK citizen. So yeah, let's talk about them. So the first few were sort of created in co-production with Hanna-Barbera because at the time Cartoon Network didn't have their own studios, and then that part of Hanna-Barbera became Cartoon Network Studios, and you know the rest. So the first one that they created was Dexter's Laboratory. So you may have heard the name, and I'm probably going to butcher his name, Jenny Tartakovsky. He's created a number of different shows, but he made his beginnings on Cartoon Network, and his first show he was kind of like the sort of head honcho of most of the early Cartoon Network original shows, Dexter's Laboratory being his main bread and butter. All about a boy genius called Dexter who's got this secret lab that he keeps secret from his parents, and the only one other person that knows about it is Dee Dee and his arch nemesis Mandark. And he goes on various adventures, making inventions, making sure Dee Dee doesn't destroy anything. And then in the sort of Jenny Tartakovsky era of the show, it had a few other extra shows. So there'd be one that would feature a kind of sort of parody of Marvel and DC heroes, and one about a super monkey. And after that show originally ended, it was given a short-lived revival with sort of a smoother looking animation, but you could still tell it was still Dexter and the rest of the gang. And it had like a feature-length finale called Ego Trip, which is one of the few Cartoon Network direct-to-home media films, and part of the Cartoon Theatre, which I'll talk a little bit later on in the video. So yeah, that's Dexter's Laboratory. Then came Johnny Bravo. So this was a show that Seth MacFarlane worked on long before the days of Family Guy and the rest of his other shows. And the show is about a guy called Johnny who wants to hit on ladies, and ladies always reject him, and he goes on various adventures and so forth trying to hit on ladies, sometimes learning lessons, other times not so much, and just trying to be this sort of full of himself person. And yeah, it's kind of a sort of self-indulgent kind of show, but you know, it's funny as well. I think the time where I actually laughed the hardest was the Scooby-Doo crossover, which Johnny's going to see his great aunt, I forget her name, but anyway, he comes across the Mystery Inc. gang, and they go into the haunted house, and yeah, all the shenanigans occur, and yeah, it's quite funny, that one. So one that hits some kind of controversy because of its sort of sexual innuendos in terms of I guess LGBT stuff, because bearing in mind this was in the sort of late 90s, when LGBT stuff was not as sort of big as it is today, or rather big or accepted as it is today, I should say. Cow and Chicken and Iron Weasel. So I'm combining these two shows together because originally Iron Weasel was part of Cow and Chicken before it became its own show, and both shows are basically about two anthropomorphic animals that are just going about life and just going through various shenanigans, often colliding with this devil guy called Red Guy, who is depicted as a villain, but not really so much of a more, he just wants to be rid of the four of them, and just, yeah, so you got Cow, you got Chicken, you got Weasel, and you got IR Baboon. And it's funny because the Cow and Chicken's parents are not exactly human, but their top halves are cut off, which does make questionable things, but it does lead to a lot of good theories. So yep, that's that one. Of course, one of the more popular ones and most well-known ones, you should all know this one, Powerpuff Girls. So Sugar Spice, Everything Nice, Chemical X, Powerpuff Girls, they get superpowers and they fight forces of evil that try and take over Townsville, yada yada yada, you know the story. Out of the two shows, I prefer the original only because it does take a lot more risks and it can show a bit more darker side to it. So, for example, there was the episode called Speed Demon, which I did share a clip of as his shorts some time ago, where him, the sort of devil character in that show, takes over the world. And some people assume that because it's depicting a sort of dystopian future, that it could be connected to another show, which I'm going to talk about later on, or that's also created by Jenny Tartakovsky. But yeah, that's Powerpuff Girls. the longest running of the original cartoons, Ed, Edd and Eddy. So this is one that lots of people that I know as friends now really enjoy, because it's kind of depicting these three, I guess, teenagers, who are trying to make these different money schemes, so that they can all go and buy jawbreakers, and often leading into failures and shenanigans and all sorts of stuff. And then there's theories of the show where all the teenagers are just in a purgatory, and there's no other characters until the final feature-length episode, I should say, where we meet Eddie's brother, and we finally find out that Eddie is not that Eddie always wanted to try and be like his brother, but never quite lived up to him because his brother's a bit of a dick. So yeah, that's Ed, Edd and Eddy. One that I don't remember as well is Mike, Lou and Odd. The most I remember about that is that there are three kind of cave prehistoric characters that live on an island and they do stuff. Yeah, that's what I know remember about that. Of course, I can't forget Courage the Cowardly Dog, because it is quite the show. So, Courage the Cowardly Dog, about a dog called Courage, who lives with Eustace and Muriel. Eustace doesn't like him very much, but Muriel loves him to bits. And there are these characters, weird and wacky characters, that come to the house, and often it's depicted that they are quite scary-looking characters, and Courage tries to get his courage to try and get rid of them, so he can protect his owners. Some people would assume that this is probably what a dog can see in strangers to them, as a sort of theory, but it is nightmare fuel in a way. So yeah, that's Courage the Cowardly Dog. Another show I don't remember too well, and the only reason why I remember it is because this character made a cameo in another Cartoon Network show, which I'm going to talk about in a little while. Sheep in a Big City. It's a sheep. He doesn't talk. He goes into a city. He does stuff. Comes back home. Farmer never finds out, I think, if I remember. And yeah, that's all I remember. Yeah, another one I don't really remember that well is Time Squad. So you've got a strong man, a robot, and a child. I guess they travel through time and do things. Honestly, the only scene I remember from that show is when the strong man is trying to knock on a door, and he's trying to knock it several times, and then a person comes out like, all right. Yeah, that's all I remember from that. Grim and Evil. So this was originally one show about containing two different cartoons that ultimately spun into their own each individual show, with Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy being more successful or more long-running than Evil Con Carne. Basic premise of both is that Grim Adventures is about the Grim Reaper who decides to spend much of his days with these two children, Billy and Mandy, which I've heard quite recently are all basically people with different forms of autism, but I don't know if that's actually true or not. And then you got Evil Con Carne, which is about this evil being that died and then was brought, but his stomach and brain remain, so they get put on this purple bear, and he goes about and he continues his evil work, often leading into various shenanigans and so forth. So yeah, that's Grim and Evil, although you could say it could just be Evil Con Carne and Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. That's just that. I do kind of feel bad for Grim Adventures, because originally there was meant to be another series called Underfist, but ultimately that never happened because of contract reasons. So that ultimately ended up being the finale of Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, which is a bit unfortunate because I would have preferred a much better finale, but you know, it's feature length and it does feature a number of the characters doing stuff, so I guess that is what it is. Another one I don't remember too well, but I did kind of like the animation style, is Whatever Happened to Robot Jones. So it's about a robot that is the only robot in the neighborhood, and the show kind of has a sort of childish drawings sort of vibe to it, and yeah, he does stuff, and yeah, that's all I know about that. So the show that Sheep in a Big City made a cameo in was Codename Kids Next Door. Now I've seen this show so many times and I love it, and I love the heck out of it. It's about children that are fighting adult tyranny from various different things, and although some of the episodes are come across as quite silly, later on in the series there is kind of a bit of depth to it, and out of all the Cartoon Network shows, most of them I feel ran their course and don't really need to continue. But I feel with Kids Next Door, there's still they revealed the Galactic Kids Next Door at the end of the show in Operation Interviews, the feature-length finale. And honestly, they could have. Honestly, Cartoon Network didn't continue it, and it was meant to have a continuation. And even the guy in charge of the show wanted to continue it, but Cartoon Network were just not interested. And I guess with Cartoon Network no longer being a thing, I don't know if it ever will continue. So it's kind of up in the air if it will continue or not. But still a good show. So most of us have had those times where we've had imaginary friends, and some guys decided to create a cartoon for Cartoon Network called Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, a show where imaginary friends are actually real, come to life, and they have a home and they get up to all sorts of fun, and you get these weird and wacky looking characters, and yeah, it's good fun. I will say some of these cartoons are not actually official cartoons as such, but appear under the banner in some areas of the world, hence why I'm including shows like this in that. Then there's Hi Hi Puffy Ami Yumi, which is about a pop band duo, I think. I'm not 100% on that. And it's just about their sort of animated adventures. Yeah, a lot of these I'm just trying to remember from memory, but there's a few that I do still own in kind of digital forms and physical media, so yeah. Then we've got Camp Lazlo, which is about these anthropomorphic animals that are on a camp and they get up to mischief. You got monkeys, you got koala bears, you got all these other critters, and they just get up to mischief. And the last one I'm going to talk about in this particular part is My Gym Partner as a Monkey, which pretty self-explanatory. There's a child, he's got a monkey as a gym partner, they go to school, they get up to mischief, yada yada yada. You can connect the dots from there. And that's kind of it for the sort of main cartoons, and then after that, any original show that would be shown on Cartoon Network would be classified as a Cartoon Network original or something along those lines, which we'll talk about in the next part. See you there! So this part we're going to talk about the Cartoon Network originals that were not under the Cartoons banner, or specifically, or at the time of when these came out, Cartoons was no longer a thing, or still was, but not quite used in the same capacity as it had been. But anyway, let's get to it. So starting off, this show was long before Disney acquired Lucasfilm, and this is Star Wars The Clone Wars, or Star Wars Clone Wars. So two versions of this exist. There's the traditionally animated one created by Jenny Totoxvi and crew, which people really like, but is nowadays no longer considered canon according to the Disney canon. And then there's the more canon one, which is Star Wars The Clone Wars, which I guess you could say only came on Cartoon Network because at the time Lucasfilm was not part of Disney, and by the time Disney bought Lucasfilm, Clone Wars had already finished its original run. Of course, it didn't have its final seasons or whatever, but yeah, you get the idea with that. Mostly it's about all the different things that happened during the Clone Wars with all the Jedis, but does have a particular focus on Ahsoka, which is who's one of the many Jedis on the show, and then you know what happened with her. So that's that one. Before these Star Wars shows, Jenny Totoxvi worked on a different action-oriented show known for not having much dialogue, and you kind of sort of embrace the sort of animation it had, which is Samurai Jack. Now, I've talked about Samurai Jack previously, and obviously, as you all know, it's about a samurai that's sent into the future and is trying to get back to his own time to stop the evil Aku. And unlike most Cartoon Network shows, this was probably the only one that had a sort of revival, in the sense that it had a sort of continuation with a final season, obviously to end the series as a whole. And it is really good. Animation's top notch. Everybody likes it. It's a great show. I don't remember Mega's XLR that well. Just checking I've read that right. Yes. Just that it's got some guys in a mech suits, and yeah, I don't really remember much else from it. I only ever remember seeing one episode, and I don't know, but yeah, it's probably one of those shows that not many people know of, or do know of, but don't really talk about much, or from my experience anyway. A show that people do talk about much though is Ben 10. So you all know Ben 10. He's a kid that gets a watch that turns him into a different alien creature that helps him on various things, and yada yada yada. You get the idea with that. He goes on adventures with his grandpa and cousin, and people seem to have a crush on him and his cousin, and then in later shows some other characters, and I for one personally have a crush on him as well, because he's cute, he's handsome, good looking, and anytime I see a shirtless picture of him I just drool. So not in a creepy way, because obviously he is a kid in all the shows, even, and in the late shows he's a teenager, but it is one of Cartoon Network's most successful franchises, because it's got several continuation shows, a reboot / remake show, and a couple of live action films. Yes, live action again, even though it's a Cartoon Network thing. Anyway, then there's Chowder. I've seen a bit of Chowder, and the most I know about this is about a character called Chowder who I guess has adventures with this professor character and this sort of strongman character, and yeah, that's the most I know about that. But animation style is interesting though, for sure. Continue with the interesting animation style, we have The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. So for the longest time I always thought that this show was actually a Nickelodeon show, because every time I saw it on various websites and so forth, for some reason I kept thinking it was associated with Nickelodeon, but no, it's actually a properly Cartoon Network show, and it's I haven't really seen much of this as well, but I know it's about a kid that is on a harbour / ship thing, and they go on various adventures, and yeah, that's it for that. Then there's Uncle Grandpa, which came out during the time when Cartoon Network was basically putting on a lot of random things just to keep it afloat, because apparently there's another show which I'll talk about a bit later that had so much randomness that they thought random's the way to go. And yeah, Uncle Grandpa is a very random show about this grandpa character that goes on different weird wacky adventures with these weird and wacky characters, one of them being a real life tiger, which is a bit strange, but there you go. Steven Universe, seen a bit of it, don't know much about it other than it's about a guy called Steven. He has these sort of guardian characters, and they do various things and so forth, and it kind of goes into the little bit of LGBT subcontext in a way, as far as I can remember, and yeah, that's all I remember about that. I don't remember OK Carrie, Let's Be Heroes that well either. I know it had a big massive Cartoon Network crossover to celebrate the channel's anniversary, whatever anniversary it was. And I guess it comes across as a sort of action-packed show with an anime kind of influenced style to it. I think, yeah, as you can probably tell, these are a lot of shows that came out long before I kind of ended watching Cartoon Network religiously, because couldn't afford it and all that. Apple and Onion. So it's about a character called Apple and a character called Onion. One of them is voiced by Richard Ayoade, who's quite a well-known comedian here in the UK. Comedian, actor, writer, so forth. And it's a bit of an interesting show, because they don't really have a go at one another or get angry at one another. They just have curious adventures, I should say. So that's that one. Maya, Heroes of Pure Heart. I only ever saw one episode. About a cat that's a warrior. Yeah, don't really know. Can't really think of anything else to talk about that one. And then we have Adventure Time, the biggest and ultimate random thing you can think of, about Finn and his dog Jake that go on various adventures, and you have all these weird wacky characters, and everything about it is just so random, and It even has a bit of deadpan acting in it, I should say. So, yeah, I've not seen Adventure Time all the way through, but I've seen a lot of episodes of it. I've seen lots of people talk about it, saying that it's like the greatest thing ever. And to be fair, I can kind of understand the greatest thing part because it is very, very popular, and people really, really like it. And I personally am not a huge fan of it per se, but I do kind of like the sort of how random and weird it is, because I'm very much a random and weird person to a lot of people. So yeah. So in terms of recent shows that I've kind of tailored to a more older audience for Cartoon Network, there's Regular Show, which I guess is about all these different adult characters that are a mix of anthropomorphic animals and actual human characters that all live in a sort of kind of thing together, and they do various different things, and it kind of treads more on the mature side of things, and it can come across as quite a serious show, but at the same time you can't help but laugh at the weird and wacky characters that are in that. And continuing with that, we have The Amazing World of Gumball. Now, lots of people have heard of this. I've seen a lot of episodes of this, and it's interesting because the only animated parts about this show are the actual characters themselves, and they're all kind of like different animation styles. Whereas the actual world that they live in is very much a big 3D CGI kind of world, which is interesting. Gives it a unique style, and it's fun, random and stuff, but it's fun, and it's all about these little characters that go to school and all this other stuff. And I've never actually seen a fish character have legs, but there you go. Hopefully it's a fish character, because if I've got that wrong, the comment section will be hounding me. And the last show I'm going to talk about for this section is Scatoony. So, in an attempt by Cartoon Network to create a sort of panel show that uses real life contestants and kind of like is treated as a live show, you got Scatoony about this, which has not really got any sort of structure to it in terms of story and so forth. But you got these, characters that run this show for Cartoon Network fans to go on, do various things. It's kind of like a game show, and often when Cartoon Network do these big major events, like I remember one they did which was called Trucks Away, where they were giving like truckloads of prizes to fans. They would always go to Scatoony to host that sort of thing. I've not seen Scatoony in such a long time, but I remember it reasonably well. And that's it for this part. So yeah, that's pretty much all the original shows that you can get on Cartoon Network. There's probably going to be some more coming up in the next few parts. But yeah, those are like the main original shows, and they're the ones that really sort of brought Cartoon Network together, really sort of gave them the edge that they needed to be unique and so forth. So yeah, in the next part we're going to talk about all things Toonami and Adult Swim. So see you then.
Toonami's back, bitches, and we've got an all-new lineup. Bleach kicks things off at midnight, followed by Dead Man Wonderland at 12:30, Casher and Sins at 1. Next, it's Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood at 1:30, Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex Second Gig at 2. And Cowboy Bebop brings us to a close at 2:30. Then we flip the switch, start the whole thing over again at 3 a.m. with a bang. Only Toonami on Adult Swim.
Are you as stoked about it as I am?
So, now we talk about the Toonami and Adult Swim stuff. So, before I go into it, I should say that I'm not going to go through every single Adult Swim and Toonami thing, because a lot of the shows that are part of that plot deserve their own videos. I'm just going to go through the ones that I have seen. When they were on Toonami/Adult Swim, and yeah. But before that, bit of a history for you. So, Toonami had its own was an animation block on Cartoon Network. Had its own storyline involving a character called Tom, who would go over several upgrades and has his own little story, which we would see as the block sort of progressed. Whereas Adult Swim is a block that's shown usually sort of like the skeleton midnight round of Cartoon Network, where they just show all the stuff that you would usually not see before the watershed. Here in the UK, we never really had Adult Swim, as in not properly Adult Swim, until Channel 4 decided to acquire it to show shows from that past the watershed. So in this sense, it's kind of a Channel 4 thing here in the UK, but the rest of the world it was on Cartoon Network. So I'm going to go through some of the shows that were on Toonami / Adult Swim, and I'll start with the DC Animated Universe. So I don't need to go too much into detail about this because I have done a video on this before. Basically, all the Boost Tim cartoons that are part of the DC Animated Universe, so Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, the Batman Superman Adventures, the Batman Superman Hour, whatever, Batman Beyond, Zeta Project, Static Shock, Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited, and all the films that are related to them. Yeah, pretty great animated series of shows. Can't go wrong with them. Great stories. They tend to go on the more mature scale for some stories, but are otherwise, pretty good. And you've got Kevin Conroy voicing Batman throughout the whole thing. Obviously, this was the franchise that made his Batman popular to begin with, because this is where he started out. And yeah, it's a good set of shows. Then we've got Dragon Ball Z. It's a popular anime. I don't think I need to explain what it is. You've all heard of it. Cartoon Network showed this before Toonami was a thing, and it sort of inspired them, well, here in the UK anyway, to start the Toonami block, which meant that they had to acquire a lot of animes, including Dragon Ball Z, and ask some of its own people to create shows for it, and Dragon Ball Z was one of those shows. You all know the story. It's got a series of story arcs. It's based on a manga series about these powerful beings called Super Saiyans, all trying to protect their universe from from the forces of evil. I remember watching the Freezer arc, the entirety of that, but never really saw the other arcs. I saw like bits and bobs of it, so often when it was advertised on TV I was a bit puzzled by why there was this big giant pink thing that's part of it be there. And I watched a lot of it, but don't remember too much about it other than it's over 9,000 and the rest of the memes, from that. Another anime that I'm not too familiar with now because it's been a while since I saw it is the Tenchi one. So there's a lot of different Tenchi animes, all about this character called Tenchi, goes about life and so forth. I think there's one called Tenchi in Tokyo, which came out during a time where Cartoon Network was going all over, was basically going all Tokyo for a little while, including the Toonami form. And yeah, I don't remember much from it. It's not the most action-packed of animes, but it's alright for what it was, from what I remember. So this is going to be an interesting one for you. Here in the UK, Cartoon Network were the people that acquired X-Men Evolution. So as we all know, X-Men these days are part of Disney / Marvel, so one would assume that they would have gone on to Fox Kids, just like the rest of the Marvel stuff there, but no. Somehow Cartoon Network decided to acquire that show for their channel, which didn't really make sense because Fox Kids / Jetix has always been the channel to have that. But anyway, compared to the anime series, it takes things a little bit more seriously in the sort of different story arcs that the X-Men comics have, but it's okay, and it definitely had a few characters that are definitely lookers. And often when you have characters that are lookers in animation, you're gonna get a lot of suggestive fan art across the internet. Yeah, just if you ever decide you have that fetish to see characters in a whole new light that's not really for people, you might want to look up Rule 34, but don't if you're definitely a person don't do that if you're a child, because you still got a lot of growing up to do, so don't ruin your childhood just yet. So next is Beyblade. I remember Beyblade quite well. I'm trying to remember if it was on Fox Kids here or Cartoon Network, but regardless, pretty straightforward. It's about these people that go into tournaments, sort of have these spinning discs that they throw about. So you got all these different animes that have all these different things, and this one is about the spinning discs that kind of battle, and they have spirits inside that they battle, and yeah. I remember the first anime of this very well, but I didn't really, and I tried to get into the second one, but didn't really get into it as well. So yeah, here's what it is. So I don't really remember Code Lyoko very well, but I know it's got something to do with characters that are part of this reality, and then they enter this virtual reality where everything changes. It's one of those unique shows that kind of uses two different forms of animation. One which is based very much traditional 2D animation, and then when you go into this virtual world, it goes all CGI, 3D, and so forth. So it does give it a unique style at the time, but I don't remember it that well, so yeah. One show I do remember reasonably well is Cubics. So this is one of those CGI animated shows, which I think was created in Korea, but I could be wrong about that. About this robot that uses cubes to fight things, and he goes with this boy, and they go on various adventures, and then there's this evil mad scientist that's trying to acquire some power source from these different robots in an attempt to, well, you kind of guess, take over the world, of course, yada. And I remember the first series well, and me and my sister made an effort to try and finish the story of the first series, and then the second series that came about, we didn't really get into it as well. I guess they kind of went downhill. And the thing about these CGI shows when they're released in the noughties and in the sort of 90s and noughties, they are probably among the few that are not going to age all that well because of the budget that CGI stuff had at the time. And the budget for CGI TV things is still pretty minimal compared to the big budget films that we get. But, you know, at least they work with what they got, and they actually do try to make it good. Whereas it's kind of no excuse if a film has got this massive budget and they just screw up with and just use cheap CGI. It's not good. So yeah. Now, I'm among the people that never quite got into He-Man and the Master Universe, and also its spin-off and other spin-offs, including She-Ra. But from what I can understand of it, it's about a guy called He-Man that holds the sword, claims he has the power, and goes fights against Skeletor. I do know bits and bobs of it through watching various videos from various people online, so I do know of it, and I remember watching at least one episode of it, but never really quite got into it, because I think it's just a bit overrated in my opinion, but that's just me. And then there's a Nintendo anime called Kirby Right Back At You, which of course is based on Kirby. Nintendo, as many of us know, were for a while quite protective of their various franchises, only letting some people create shows and films about them, which I guess is why Illumination went off to create the Super Mario movie, because Nintendo happened to have a themed land in the Universal Studios, and yeah. But anyway, it's Kirby Right Back At You. It's about Kirby going on his wacky adventures, trying to stop King DDD and coming across conflicts and defeating various gods and everything. And yeah, some people don't believe that Kirby is capable of fighting various gods and that, but when you actually get down to it, he's actually the only character of all the characters you see in Super Smash Bros. That's actually fought more gods than any of those other characters. I think the closest link from Legend of Zelda's fought god is obviously Ganon. Closest Mario's fought gods is Bowser when he's super ultra powered, and yeah, the rest is history, I guess. So one that I'm not too convinced is actually part of Toonami, or was part of Toonami, is Kong the animated series. Yes. Just when you thought there can't be any more animated series based on beloved characters, yes, there is a King Kong animated series. And I don't remember anything about it apart from I saw a couple of episodes, and yeah, you can probably guess less from there. So what I find interesting about my friend Clank Zoka is that of all things that are animated, he actually remembers the sort of very underrated animated things more so than the popular ones. Yes, okay, he does like a lot of popular animated stuff as well, good on him. But he does also remember a lot of underrated ones that are very popular on YouTube in terms of YouTube groups and so forth. And one of those is Home Movies, which, if you see it, you're gonna get a sense that it was made on a very tight budget, but it could have been made by one person, and it's very much as you'd expect it to be. Cheaply made, but still okay, still good, still and all that. And honestly, personally, I don't remember too much about it other than it was on Cartoon Network once upon a time, and I saw a couple of episodes again. So yeah. Next, Monster Rancher. So I remember this one quite well, and and I'm not sure if it was on Cartoon Network or Fox Kids here. It's up for debate. But anyway, about this guy that comes across some monster characters, and he goes on various adventures with these monster characters, and it's implied that he's experiencing all this in a dream, or is experiencing all this in some other form. It's kind of one of those shows where you get the sense that it might be a kind of purgatory for some child that's in a coma, but not necessarily true. Nevertheless, I do remember watching a lot of episodes of this, but as it's been so long since I've seen it, I don't remember that much apart from the monsters that appear in it, and that it's not and that is quite a very underrated anime compared to the likes of Dragon Ball Z. So, yeah. And on the other scale, there is an overrated anime, and that is Pokemon. Yeah, do I need to really talk about this? I think you all know it. It's about a trainer called Ash Ketchum that tries to train Pokemon, and it's implied that he's 10 years old for the entirety of the anime series. And I know his character has since retired, but yeah, he's had several times where he's turned 10, several films, and people just question the logic of how characters can just not age over the period of time. With The Simpsons, you can kind of accept it because it's all the characters are not aging. It's not just the children, it's all characters. But Pokemon, it's like, really? Yeah. Anyway. So I guess I should talk about Teen Titans, but before you click away, I'm going to talk about the OG Teen Titans, because the OG Teen Titans are the Teen Titans that people like. Yes, they are voiced by the same cast that voiced the characters in Teen Titans Go, but it's a much better series because there's a lot of serious moments, there's a lot of goofy moments, but not as many goofy moments as there is in the Go On, which is basically a dumbed down version of Teen Titans. And you know, it's got lots of great characters, and it's the first time that the Teen Titans actually look like teenagers, and actually very attractive teenagers, I should add. And it's a pretty good show. I've seen most of the episodes in the show, and it's very good. It's not exactly an anime per se, but it is inspired by anime. And I know it was originally planned to be part of the DC Animated Universe, but eventually it was retooled into being its own thing. But it do sort of reference other characters in that particular universe. It's a shame that it kind of ended when it did, and I do kind of wish that Go ends soon, because while Go does have some decent episodes, it is very much a show that just keeps on going and should really, really stop, please. So yeah. Then there's Cowboy Bebop. I will admit I don't really remember this one that well, but I do know it's a very beloved anime that Netflix ruined with their take on it. But I guess the idea of it is that it's a group of bandits that try to do various things, and yeah, that's most I remember of that. Robot Chicken. It's a popular show on Adult Swim, created by Seth Green and some other people. Most of the cast are the cast of Family Guy and other things, and it's very much a show featuring a lot of different sketches, featuring different girls, and it's all stop motion and everything. And it's good, and it is good fun. Lots of great things going on, and it's a lot of risque stuff is in there as well. they've had a few special episodes where they poke fun at Star Wars, poke fun at DC, poke fun at The Walking Dead, and all sorts of other things as well. And it's still going today, as far as I know. So yeah. And last one I'm going to talk about for this section is The Batman. So when I say The Batman, I'm not talking about the Robert Pattinson film. I am, of course, talking about the animated show, The Batman, which came out probably towards the end of Justice League Unlimited, and it's because of this show's existence that this is the reason why in Justice League Unlimited you don't see as many characters from the Batman franchise, apart from Batman himself and of course Batman Beyond. But this show is pretty much another take on Batman, albeit a younger Batman facing younger versions of his villains, and coming across the Bat Family, a version of the Justice League that's also young, and other things as well. And he goes about fighting crime, and pretty much it's Batman the animated series, but taken up a notch with animation and other stuff. And Kevin Conroy doesn't return to voice Batman, but he does appear in one episode, which is an episode to do with Robin's origins, specifically Dick Grayson. So yeah. And that is it for the Toonami / Adult Swim lot. Obviously, I have missed out a few because I feel there's a few shows that are better off having videos of their own. So yeah. So next part will be I'll be talking about all the different cartoon / animated shows that Cartoon Network acquired. By which I mean they didn't make them themselves, and it's not seen as a Cartoon Network original or cartoon. They're just shows that Cartoon Network, regardless of which country you're in, happened to acquire for the network for a certain period of time. So that's what we're going to talk about next. So I'll see you then.
Now on Cartoon Network, it's Shaolin Showdown. Join Ami and his fellow Shaolin trainees, Clay, Kamiko, and Raimundo, as they travel around the world searching for the mystical Shen Gong Wu.
Magic Sepoy!
Uh-oh.
Nami, ice!
It's Shaolin Showdown, Monday through Friday at 6 on Cartoon Network.
So, you've heard about the shows that started Cartoon Network, you've heard about the shows that they created themselves, and you've heard about the shows that they had in their Toonami / Adult Swim block when those were still a thing. So now, I'm going to talk about the animated shows that Cartoon Network acquired, by which I mean they didn't make these shows themselves, they just happened to acquire the rights to them and be able to broadcast them. Kind of like much of the shows you see on Toonami and Adult Swim, plus also the cartoons that they had, cartoon / animated shows they had before making their own stuff through the cartoons and just Cartoon Network originals. So let's get to it. Once I've unlocked my tablet, bear with.
A few moments later.
Okay, so now Angela Anaconda. So this show here in the UK was on Cartoon Network. It wasn't on Fox Kids like it is in other countries, which meant that the opening sort of sketch / short film for Digimon the movie didn't quite make sense, but there you go. Anyway, I don't like this show at all. It is creepy as heck. The animation's stiff. The faces of the characters are creepy. I get it's trying to see a sort of realism thing, but yeah, it's just very creepy, and I'm gonna stop talking about that one. People often talk fondly of Animaniacs, and I certainly talk fondly of Animaniacs because it is a great show. Just so many great sketches featuring lots of cartoon, animated, whatever characters, just doing what they do best, just slapstick, making people laugh, having a few innuendo jokes here and there. I'm not too keen on the reboot series. I've not seen that series much, but it's great that this show still has a fan base many years later, and it's even had a spin-off in the form of Pinky in the Brain and another Pinky in the Brain show featuring another character. And yeah, really great show. Definitely very quotable and lots of fun. Now, I don't remember Atomic Betty very well. I just remember that it came out some years ago, and it's about this girl who is a high schooler who has her life split up. She's a high schooler, but also secretly goes secretly becomes a sort of hero character going through space and so forth, doing stuff, saving the day and that. Yeah, that's the most time ever from that. Then we've got Batman the Brave and the Bold. This came out long after Toonami ended on its original run on Cartoon Network, hence why it's not part of it. And it's pretty much a more light-hearted take on everything to do with Batman and DC heroes in general, specifically focusing on the Brave and the Bold comic book, the line of comics. It's also the only series I know of, the animated that is, that actually dared to do that one story about what would happen if Batman ever found his killer Joe Chill. I've talked about this in a Batman Day video I did or have done. I've not yet decided when. At the time of doing this bit, I've not yet decided when I'm gonna have this vlog on YouTube yet, but it will be up. But it will be. You will have seen it then. Yeah. Anyway, and yeah, it's kind of a celebration of Batman because it features Adam West, it has Kevin Conroy, and it has Mark Hamill in it, in addition to the original cast of The Brave and the Bold, and yeah, it's quite an episode, that one. So, well, often, as many of us know, lots and lots of films often get a cartoon or animated series tie-in, which was a thing way back when, and is kind of still a thing today, but not as much of a big deal, much like the tie-in video games, where they have kind of become a thing of the past, or rather they're still around, just in a sort of minuscule sort of way. But anyway, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, the animated series. I don't really remember much from this, other than it's basically depicting Flint in a school setting. You got all the characters from the film in there, even the weather girl, who I forget the name of, who apparently was there, even though the film made out that she is the first time she's been there. Yeah, it's that sort of thing. Now, usually I don't watch shows that are tailored to a female or feminine audience. I apologise if I sound very sexist when I say that, but DC Superhero Girls was once a thing, and this is pretty much as you'd expect it to be. A bunch of superheroines from the DC universe are just teenagers and are just doing stuff together, fighting crime and all this other stuff, and all this stuff. I've only ever seen the crossover with them and Teen Titans Go, and that's it. But they much like some of the Toonami stuff, they've also had a few suggestive images over the years. Yeah, I don't know much about it other than it's tailored to a female or feminine audience, all about female or feminine DC characters, and that's it. Returning to the tie-in film, the animated series tie-in stuff, we've got Dumb and Dumber, which was a thing on Cartoon Network at some point. Pretty much as you'd expect it to be. It's the continuing adventures of the two dummies from the film Dumb and Dumber, and just doing what they do best, just muck about, being stupid, and all this other stuff. I'm not 100% sure if Jim Carrey or I forget the guy's name, the other actor's name, did reprise their roles, but yeah, you can tell it's very much inspired by the film, and I've only ever seen a few episodes of it, so yeah. So around the time Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain were still going, another show that was coming from the same team was Freakazoid. I guess you could say that this is kind of a hero that's trying to not take himself too seriously and is just a parody of heroes in general, and just, yeah, hence the name Freakazoid, but yeah, what do I know. So I previously talked about Kong, the animated series. Now there's Godzilla, the animated series, and this is a series that's a tie-in to not the Godzilla film we had 10 years ago. We're talking about the Godzilla film that came before that, the one that Sony Pictures did, the one that has that thing we don't really call Godzilla. But anyway, there was an animated series. I'm going to say no more than that. I did watch a couple of episodes, don't remember much from it, and that's what I'm going to say on that. Then there's the Green Lantern animated series. So unlike the Superman animated series and Batman animated series, this one is not set in the DC animated universe as such. It's its own universe, and it features Hal Jordan as the main character, and it's kind of like it's trying to capture the look of the DC animated universe, but with a CGI feel to it, and I guess in that sense it's trying to be its own thing while also trying to replicate what's come before it, and it does an okay job given the budget that it's had, and it's alright. It's a shame it only lasted for one series, but it's a pretty good series overall, I think. So Lego decided they wanted a piece of the pie when it came to TV shows, and while they could have done it with Bionicle during its original run, they had loads of opportunities they could do that, and they didn't take it. The only time, the closest they've ever gone to actually telling the story through forms other than through books and comic books is with Flash animations, 4 feature films, and that's it. Never for a minute did they think, how about a TV show? So once Hero Factory was a thing, they decided, yep, we're going to turn this into a TV show, and we got one on Cartoon Network. And I'm going to say no more than that, other than I've seen a couple of episodes, don't remember much from them, and that's what I'm going to say. Johnny Test. So Johnny Test is not exactly like Johnny Quest. It's a very different show itself, but you can kind of tell it's kind of inspired by it. It's a bit of a silly show. It's about this kid called Johnny Test who has an anthropomorphic dog that talks, and 2 twin sisters that are secretly scientists, and they go out to a lot of different adventures. And honestly, the only reason why I'm talking about it rather than skipping over it is because it's once again another one of those shows where I actually did like the sort of suggestive images of some of the characters, specifically Gil and Johnny Test himself, because they are quite attractive male animated characters, I must say. So much so that there is actually an episode where Gil is quite literally playing a character called Shirtless Boy, where he's doing videos on their version of YouTube, and he's just being shirtless because, you know, fan service is a thing, and yeah. So there was a series based on the Legion of Superheroes, which is this superhero team from DC that are in the future, and traditionally it's Supergirl that's gone with them to be part of that team in the future. But not every version has kind of followed that. So in the Supergirl Supergirl TV series, Supergirl herself doesn't go with the team at all. Someone else goes within the DEO. And in this series, it's actually Superman that goes instead of Supergirl. I've only ever seen a couple of episodes, and from what I've seen, it's okay. It's kind of a balance between humour and seriousness, but with some dark elements and so forth as well. So that's that one. Returning to Lego, we have Ninjago, Masters of Spinjitzu. I've seen a few episodes of this, and I'm kind of grateful I did see a few episodes of this before seeing the Ninjago film, because without it I would have probably not, the Ninjago film would have not made much sense to me, but fortunately I did watch a few episodes. Although the Ninjago movie is actually set in the Lego movie universe, not actually in the Ninjago TV universe, I'm grateful because it's an okay show about ninjas fighting, and yeah. A more short-lived Lego theme that wasn't as popular as Ninjago or the Bionicle / Hero Factory ones, but did kind of had a bit of a following, was Legends of Chima, which is Lego's take of trying to bring anthropomorphic animals as warriors. So you've got a, and I'm hoping I'm getting this correct, I'm probably going to get this wrong, you've got a crocodile character, you've got an eagle character, and you've got a tiger / lion kind of character, all trying to protect the world of Chima from forces of evil. Now, when you've got a popular character like Mr. Bean, of course there's going to be an animated series about him, because there's pretty much an animated series of most live action characters, but with Mr. Bean, you don't really need much with him. It's just mannerisms and just the sort of mumblings and so forth, because he's a character that Rowan Atkinson created that doesn't need to even say anything, and you don't even need a translation or subtitles or anything to understand what he's trying to do. And in the animated series, it's pretty much exactly like the live action show. It's got the slapstick, it's got the humour. It's pretty much in every way like the show, just with more stuff going on because it's animated, and therefore it doesn't mean Owen Atkinson has to hire a stuntman to do these stunts and yada yada yada. And I heard it's still going on, but I'm not sure because I have seen much of this show because I've got it on DVD, and it's okay. It's not as good as the live action Mr. Bean stuff, but it's okay for what it is. So I remember many summers ago, Cartoon Network had a show called Mucha Lucha, which, as you might have guessed, is an animated show about Mexican wrestling families living in a sort of town together, and they all have the Mexican wrestling school. Everyone's wearing masks, and they're all fighting and all sorts. And there's a rule where that if they take their masks off, they can't. It's kind of against the law there, and all this stuff. And it's silly, but in a good kind of way, because it's all about these wrestlers that are pretty much based on Mexican wrestlers in general, but have their own unique style and twist to them and that. So yeah. Returning to the tie-in animated shows, Ozzy and Drix. So this is a tie-in to the very underrated and I heard not very well made animated film Osmosis Jones, excuse me, which is about these sort of blood cells / drug things living inside Bill Murray. Obviously Bill Murray's playing a character in the film, but I'm just going to say Bill Murray just to make it easier. And in the show, Bill Murray's character is not in it much, and the cells that are Ozzy and Drix end up arriving in some other kid in a different person's body, and they decide to reside there as sort of detectives trying to solve crimes and that, while also protecting the body from trying to induce viruses and so forth. And yeah, it's kind of an attempt by some animators to create a show about the human body while not making it too educational, not making it too patronising like some educational shows for young children can be if you're watching it as an adult. But it's good. It's good. So next we have Robot Boy. So this show's about a kid that has this robot, obviously called Robot Boy, who must be protected and must not fall into the wrong hands, because otherwise things will happen. And Robot Boy does what he can to protect himself, but often has to transform to fight excuse me, fight bad guys in an attempt to save his people and other bits and bobs in there. I've seen lots of episodes of this, and it's another one of those shows where I don't exactly have a fetish for the characters in the show in terms of suggestive images, with the exception of maybe one of the bully characters who I have a bit of a crush on. But yeah, that's Robot Boy. Returning to the Animaniacs and Freakazoid shows, we now have Tasmania, which, as you might have guessed, is about Tasmania, as in the Tasmanian Devil from Looney Tunes, and the wacky adventures he has. Seen lots of episodes of this, and I think this was the show that got my uncle from up north in Scotland into the Tasmanian Devil. And yeah, it's good, it's funny, slapstick at its best. What more can you want? So yeah. The Addams Family. They have had many forms of media. They've had films, they've had TV shows, they even had animated shows, and they all came. And even though people assume that it's a film that started off as one film and then had all these other things, actually no. They actually originally started as newspaper comics and then became their own thing. And they didn't exactly start as being scary characters associated with Halloween. They actually started out as a sort of imaged kind of a typical family of sorts. But anyway, so at some point Cartoon Network acquired one of the different cartoons to do with the Addams Family, and the one they got is the one that has the famous theme to it, which I feel is interesting. And I remember watching that a lot. I also remember watching the live action animated show a lot when it was on Fox Kids, and of course the films as well. Can't go on with the films, except for the recent animated films, which I'm actually not that personally keen on, but that's just me. Next we have the Cramp Twins. Now, so this is basically about two two siblings that are at war with one another, you know, sibling rivalry and all that. One of them's into junk, the other's into swamp stuff, and they go on some weird, crazy adventures with their parents and do other stuff. And it's an okay show. I'm not sure if I would say it's one of Cartoon Network's best shows in terms of the shows that they acquired. Well, here in the UK anyway. But it's alright, that one. Another animated series from a film, The Mask. Well, I say the film, but The Mask is actually a comic book that was turned into the Jim Carrey film, and the rest is history. But anyway, so this is another animated series based on a Jim Carrey film, and it's pretty much as you'd expect it to be. The guy puts the mask on, spins around, and then does some weird, wacky, crazy stuff, and it's pretty much got everything a slapstick show should have. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and it was definitely very much child friendly. It doesn't have all the adult references from the films or anything, and it's okay. I don't know too much about Moomin or Mormon, but I know my sister was into it a lot, and I know it's based on the books, and I know it's had several versions of it, and Cartoon Network had a version of it at one point. I don't really know that much about it, but I have seen a bit of it, and it's quite pleasant looking and relaxing, I guess. So yeah, that's that. At some point, Cartoon Network did at one point have the rights to the original Transformers the Animated Series. I think I might be wrong about that, but I may as well talk about it anyway. You all know it. It's about Optimus Prime and the gang doing stuff. Optimus Prime dies at one point. They do stuff. The film is well known for being the greatest, among the greatest Transformers films ever. Long before the Michael Bay films and the films that Paramount make after Michael Bay finished his directed films, and it's alright. Always. Last of the Steven Spielberg animated stuff to do with Animaniacs and so forth. Tiny Toon Adventures. It's pretty much Looney Tunes all over again, but for a newer generation and featuring newer jokes and so forth. So yeah, that's that. Pretty good. So the Lego Movie didn't really have a sort of tie-in animated series per se, but it did have a spin-off series, which is Unikitty. Obviously about Unikitty and the powers she has, and it's not all set in Cloud Cuckoo Land. It's actually set in her own little kingdom, kind of separate from the mainstream Unikitty we see in the Lego Movie, but still pretty fun. And you do get to see cameos from the characters in the Lego Movie 2 during Queen Whatever Nabi's villain song. So yeah, it's alright. A show that's very underrated and I feel does definitely needs more recognition, I'm kind of glad it did have a sort of continuation / reboot, is Shaolin Showdown. So this is about a group of young warriors that are trained in the art of showdowns and karate and whatever, and they go on a quest to find these artifacts called Shengon Wu, which give them powers that they can use against their battles. And every time they find one of these artifacts and they face off against the villains, they go do this thing called a Shaolin Showdown, where each combatant has to have Shengon Wu that they can use against the other, and they have instructions and go into a battle, and yeah, it just goes like that. So that's that. Now, Young Justice technically wasn't part of Cartoon Network to begin with, at least, but in some countries it was kind of part of Cartoon Network in a way. So I'm going to include it here, and it's pretty much as you'd expect it to be. It's not quite like Teen Titans, but it kind of follows the same sort of formula as Teen Titans, in that all these DC superheroes have these young proteges, and they try to put them into their own team, and they try and prove themselves. And it's kind of a typical thing where the main heroes don't want them to do too much, and then these young heroes do too much and betray them, and then they initially think they're getting told off, but actually in truth they're actually impressed by them and decide to form their own team and do stuff. The show did have a good few seasons, but then kind of ended and then was brought back again, and yeah, it's kind of going on and off at points. So yeah. And the last show I'm going to talk about that Cartoon Network has shown in some countries, not necessarily here, but definitely in other countries, is Total Drama, which is the overall name for the show, which is basically a parody of all those typical reality shows where these sort of young adult characters are all wanting fame, fortune, and all that, and become reality stars. So they go to this place and do all these different challenges, so forth. Each one gets eliminated, and yada yada. And once again, it is one of those shows where I do get a little fetish for suggested images, because it is what it is. And that is all the acquired, or well, actually no, not all the acquired, most of the acquired shows I've seen on Cartoon Network when they had the rights to them. So all these shows are not necessarily connected to Cartoon Network in any shape or form. They're just shown on the channel at one point or another, in certain countries depending on where you live. Some countries have them have these shows on other channels, whereas here in the UK they're all on Cartoon Network, or most of them are anyway. So we're nearly done. Now, last part I'll be talking about the different animated films that Cartoon Network has shown. Many of them are very underrated and not as well known as some of the bigger animated films out there. So, and they're all part of this thing called Cartoon Theatre, which is an attempt by Cartoon Network to basically show off films in a sort of edited down way so that they can include commercial breaks and so forth. So yeah, see you then.
Welcome to Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater.
Okay guys, last part, I promise. Thanks for staying with me for this long. So I've talked about all the animated shows, cartoons, whatever that I've seen on Cartoon Network, and its various blocks that I remember seeing. So now let's talk about some films. So yes, Cartoon Network is no stranger to having animated films, and even some films that have live action segments in them, but are otherwise animated. And I decided to look at the films that are specifically animated, and specifically ones that are unlikely to ever be seen anywhere else, because most of these are very underrated animated films that, for as long as I know, you can get them on DVD and you might be able to get them on Blu-ray, but they're quite scarce in terms of where you can actually watch them, access them and everything, apart from when they were on Cartoon Network. So let's get to it. So first up is the BFG. Now, when I talk about the BFG, I am of course referring to the Roald Dahl story, and for this one I'm talking about the actual traditionally animated film, not the one that Steven Spielberg made a few years ago. Now this version is a musical. It's got David Jason in the role of BFG. Those who don't know who David Jason is, he is Del Boy from Only Fools and Horses, and he voices the BFG in this film. And I've seen this film a couple of times. One of my good friends praises the heck of it and religiously watches it every so often. But in my opinion, it's an okay attempt, and I think it does, and I think it is better than the Steven Spielberg film. But the animation specifically for not the BFG specifically, but for many of the other characters, is dated. Like, it's so dated, and it just kind of feels a bit strange and weird in places, but that's just me. I never actually saw the BFG on Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theatre, but I did see it on DVD many years later, and also on TV as well. So yeah, that's how I know about that one. Then we got An American Tail. So this is one of Don Bluth's films. Those who don't know, Don Bluth was a Disney animator, but left the company due to differences and formed his own company to be in competition with Disney, which led up to the Disney Renaissance and other stuff. But anyway, and one of his films is An American Tail. This was shown on Cartoon Network a few times. I first saw this from my grandparents' place because they happened to have recorded this on VHS. Yes, there was a time when I was around when VHS was still a major mainstream thing. And basically it's a story about a mouse that gets separated from his family, and they try and reunite and find themselves in America, New York, wherever. And they're trying to reunite while trying to also stop some cats from doing things to them. You know, cat and mouse sort of thing. And it's an okay film. I quite enjoyed it. Yeah, not really much to it. It's well animated, well acted. It's got some interesting characters. Don't bother with the sequels. I've heard they're not very good. So yeah, moving on from that. Then we've got All Dogs Go to Heaven. People have heard of this one a lot as well. I'm trying to remember if it's a Don Bluth, and it probably is, probably isn't. Personally, I don't get it. I really don't get the idea of it. It's not really something I've ever tried to get, and every time I've tried to watch it on TV, it's always a case of I watch it but then kind of get bored with it. It just doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. Now, I know I said I'll be talking specifically about the animated films, but I am going to make an exception for one film and possibly a couple of others, Casper. Now, the reason why I'm making an exception for this one is because Casper originally was an animated thing, and it's one of those few animated films where the animated characters are very much as they were from the animated show. They actually did get that part right in this live action film. So many films based on cartoons that try and animated stuff that's turned into live action often try to change things too much, and this was like only one of a few times I should say that I've seen a live action film actually get the characters right from the animation. So well done. It doesn't excuse the fact that the villain is a bit over the top when she becomes a ghost, but it's okay. It's not bad of a film, Casper. Then we've got Ferngully. Most of you have heard of this one. It's about some fairies that are trying to protect their forest from the likes of man, because man is someone that's trying to destroy the rainforest and for things and stuff. And you got Tim Curry being a demon thing that's trying to destroy the forest. And yeah, it's kind of a bit over the top and chaotic, but a good, okay kind of film nonetheless. So yeah. So. Having seen The Wizard of Oz before seeing this next film, Journey Back to Oz is, I guess you could say, falls under the category of Oz sequels that people don't really quite understand or don't quite get, and overall it's an okay kind of sequel. I'm not sure if I'd ever watch it again, but first few times I saw it, didn't really do much for me, so yeah, I'll move on from that. A very overrated animated film that's not a Disney film is Land Before Time. I say overrated because it's had way too many sequels, and I don't even know why it's had way too many sequels. I guess the studio just found some kind of popularity with it or something, I don't know. But anyway, Land Before Time, about some young dinosaurs getting from A to B, trying to reunite, and yeah, you can get the idea with that. Decent animation, good story, and yeah, pretty good. So you've probably heard Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone, and you've probably seen him in Richie Rich and a bunch of other films as well. But one film that not many people really talk about that he stars in is a film called Pagemaster. Now, he stars in this in sort of two forms. He's a live action character, but he also voices a character as well. Basically, he plays this child that goes to this library, and somehow the library has this thing where he suddenly gets turned into animation, and suddenly you get these books turn into actual characters from the books, and he goes on a little adventure with them. And yeah, it's a kind of interesting kind of story, not really executed well, seeing it many years later, but yeah, it's one of those stories where you can actually see where Macaulay Culkin is actually animated really well when he turns into an animated character, and yeah, it's an interesting one, that one. One that I do have fond memories of watching, but I do kind of think now is not that good, having seen people review it, Reverend Dangerfield. So you've probably heard of this comedian who decided he wanted to do a sort of stand-up routine, but as an animated dog, and this is basically it. Reverend Dangerfield is a stand-up comedian dog who's a slacker, and he gets kidnapped, sent to this farm where he finds a new way of life, and it's kind of one of those stories where a character is living the good life and then is thrown into the deep end and tries to live a new life with these characters and tries to gain their trust and everything, and yada yada yada. You kind of get the idea with that. And it's got some interesting things to it, like a dead turkey, and it does do a lot of mature stuff. And honestly, it's not an outright terrible film, but it's not one I'd probably see again after. Because I watched this as a child, and as a child I was oblivious to a lot of things, and Rover Dangerfield, after seeing it again in a sort of as an adult, it's not as good as I remember it. So yeah. So some years ago, my family won at a raffle a DVD copy of The Swan Princess. We never saw this on Cartoon Network, but I know it was a Cartoon Network film, that a film on Cartoon Network, I should say, that was broadcast. And I can kind of get why people don't particularly like this over Disney's stuff, but for a while I thought it was okay, and it is a little bit quotable, but not that much quotable. And yeah, it's not a great film, but certainly not a bad film for sure. All about a princess that turns to a swan at night. No, hold on. Turns into a human at night and then a swan during the day. Kind of a sort of, yeah, true love's kiss breaks the curse. You get it. Yada yada yada. I don't think I need to really talk about Watership Down much, because I know lots of you have heard about this one. It is one of those animated films that you really question the reason why it's got the rating that it's got, the age rating that is, because it's such a mature, heavy film, and it's kind of like a similar film called Animal Farm, where there's like so much political propaganda in it. You do question the age ratings on both these films. It's just strange. So yeah. And while I could talk about the films that are connected to the actual cartoons on Cartoon Network, they're kind of all pretty much as they are on Cartoon Network. The only difference is that everything's built up on a grander scale and everything. Although I do question the logic behind the Tom and Jerry movie, about, especially with Tom and Jerry actually talking and that. So yeah. But anyway, last film I'm going to talk about is Wind in the Willows. So I'm talking about the stop motion one, and any version I've seen of Wind in the Willows, it's the same basic story. Nothing changes really, except maybe a few extra action scenes, extra stunts and so forth. But it's nevertheless the same basic story where Toad is in a load of shit, so he enlists the help of his two comrades, and they go fight foxes. And yeah, I get the idea with that. And that is it for Cartoon Theatre and also this overall vlog. Thank you for sticking around for so long. I know it's been a very, very long video. Probably my most ambitious vlog yet. So yeah, and I'm going to close by saying a few things about Cartoon Network. It's a cartoon channel for sure. It's had a few live action things, but not too many, fortunately, because it's meant to be cartoons and just cartoons. So good on it, or animated stuff. It's definitely defined my childhood, and it's defined lots of people's childhoods. It's the one channel I always go to whenever I am going through a difficult time, like when I'm ill, or when I'm just can't be bothered to go to school, and because I'm just not feeling great, and also when I've gone through some hard times with family and so forth. It's definitely had lots of great shows on it. Some of which I still watch today on the platforms I'm able to access them on. I remember fondly dressing up as Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory for a fun run once, which was interesting. And I just admire the animation that all of them have, all the characters, all the great things, all those amazing moments that they all had. Made them so good. Obviously the more recent cartoons and animated stuff I'm not really watched much of, because they're just not that, I'm not really into them much, with the exception of Adventure Time, The Amazing World of Gumball, and Regular Show, maybe a few others as well. But yeah, it is what it is. And for the longest time I've enjoyed everything on Cartoon Network, the acquired shows, the shows that they made themselves, the shows that they started with, some of the films, not all the films, and everything I was able to see on Toonami and Adult Swim, and the things that they still continue today that I'm able to watch elsewhere. And it is a shame that as a channel it's no longer a channel anymore. In some countries, I know here in the UK it's still technically a channel, but it is getting to that point. But I've enjoyed it, and I think there's no other channels that I like that's like it. It is one of a kind, unique, and everything, and I just love it to bits. And I have got some merchandise, not much. Like I've got some Pop Funkos. I used to have a compilation DVD of some of the cartoons, and then went on to buy some DVDs of the actual cartoons themselves. So yeah, and yeah, it is a great channel. It was a great channel, and it's one of a kind. I don't think we'll ever see a channel like it again. And yeah, thank you Cartoon Network for helping me get through difficult times, helping define my childhood, and just giving me some great stuff that unfortunately, because of my fellow classmates, I wasn't able to talk much about to them, because not many of them actually had access to Cartoon Network. They were all access to the terrestrial channels, which, you know, is a shame, but hey ho, they're lost at the end of the day. They missed out some amazing things. So yeah. And thank you for helping me reach 700 subscribers. It's been a interesting couple of years, you know, doing so many videos at once, and I've reached 700, and I'm looking forward to the day when I reach 800 and further on. So thank you so much. Obviously, if you've not subscribed yet, please do so if you want to. But like, I don't do as long of videos like this, but I do lots of vlogs like this where I talk about pop culture and do hauls and talk about life as well. And in addition to that, I also do let's play videos, gameplay videos where there's no commentary, and lots of shorts as well. Usually on a schedule, most of them are uploaded at 1 PM BST/GMT every single day, and shorts are uploaded 9 AM, 9 PM and 3 PM BST/GMT as and when I feel like doing shorts. So yeah, and if you liked this long video, then give it a like, share with your pals, leave comments. See you in the next one. Peace to you all. Again, thank you so much for helping me reach 700 subscribers. And if you've not yet checked out the amazing cartoons and animated shows on Cartoon Network, and keep in mind there is a difference between cartoons and animation, so don't assume that they're both one and the same. Do check them out. Most are available on iTunes and Google Play, and then I think you can access them through other means as well. But yeah, they're all amazing. Definitely stick to the OG ones when it comes to Teen Titans and Powerpuff Girls, because the OG ones are better than the current ones. I can definitely guarantee you that for sure. And here's to 800 subscribers. And I'm going to close this by just putting up another Cartoon Network music video or celebration video. So yeah, again, thank you for watching. See you in the next one, and toodles.
Oh, yeah.